Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to do a raw steno demo from Don Quixote audiobook on YouTube. To see the link to the original file, audiobook file, you can go to the description of this video and I'll put the link there.
This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Recording by Catherine Fitz, Davis, California. Don Quixote, Volume 1, by Miguel de Cervantes Saavedra. Translated by John Ormsby. Part 11, Chapter 29, which treats of the droll device and method adopted to extricate our love-stricken knight from the severe penance he had imposed upon himself. Such, sirs, is the true story of my sad adventures. Judge for yourselves now whether the sighs and lamentations you heard, and the tears that flowed from my eyes, had not sufficient cause, even if I had indulged in them more freely. And if you consider the nature of my misfortune, you will see that consolation is idle, as there is no possible remedy for it. All I ask of you is, what you may easily and reasonably do, to show me where I may pass my life unharassed by the fear and dread of discovery by those who are in search of me. For though the great love my parents bear me makes me feel sure of being kindly received by them, so great is my feeling of shame at the mere thought that I cannot present myself before them as they expect, that I had rather banish myself from their sight forever than look them in the face with the reflection that they beheld mine stripped of that purity they had a right to expect in me. With these words she became silent, and the color that overspread her face showed plainly the pain and shame she was suffering at heart. In theirs, the listeners felt as much pity as wonder at her misfortunes. But as the curate was just about to offer her some consolation and advice, Cardenio forestalled him, saying, "So then, Señora, you are the fair Dorothea, the only daughter of the rich Clenardo?" Dorothea was astonished at hearing her father's name, and at the miserable appearance of him who mentioned it, for it has already been said how wretchedly clad Cardenio was. So she said to him, "And who may you be, brother, who seems to know of my father's name so well? For so far, if I remember rightly, I have not mentioned it in the whole story of my misfortunes." "I am that unhappy being, Señora," replied Cardenio, "whom, as you have said, Lucinda declared to be her husband. I am the unfortunate Cardenio, whom the wrongdoing of him who has brought you to your present condition has reduced to the state you see me in, bare, ragged, bereft of all human comfort, and what is worse, of reason, for I only possess it when heaven is pleased for some short space to restore it to me. I, Dorothea, am he who witnessed the wrong done by Don Fernando, and waited to hear the yes uttered by which Lucinda owned herself his betrothed. I am he who had not courage enough to see how her fainting fit ended, or what came of the paper that was found in her bosom, because my heart had not the fortitude to endure so many strokes of ill fortune at once. And so, losing patience, I quitted the house, and leaving a letter with my host, I betook myself to these solitudes, resolved to end here the life I hated as if it were my mortal enemy. But fate would not rid me of it, contenting itself with robbing me of my reason, perhaps to preserve me for the good fortune I have had in meeting you. For if that which you have just told us be true, as I believe it to be, it may be that heaven has yet in store for both of us a happier termination to our misfortunes than we look for. Because seeing that Lucinda cannot marry Don Fernando, being mine, as she has herself so openly declared, and that Don Fernando cannot marry her as he is yours, we may reasonably hope that heaven will restore us to what is ours, as it is still in existence and not yet alienated or destroyed. And as we have this consolation springing from no very visionary hope or wild fancy, I entreat you, Signora, to form new resolutions in your better mind, as I mean to do in mine, preparing yourself to look forward to happier fortunes. For I swear to you by the faith of a gentleman and a Christian, not to desert you until I see you in possession of Don Fernando. And if I cannot by words induce him to recognize his obligation to you, in that case, to avail myself of the right which my rank as a gentleman gives me, and with just cause challenge him, on account of the injury he has done you, not regarding my own wrongs, which I shall leave to heaven to avenge, while on earth I devote myself to yours. Cardenio's words completed the astonishment of Dorothea, and not knowing how to return thanks for such an offer, she attempted to kiss his feet, but Cardenio would not permit it, and the licentiate replied for both, commending the sound reasoning of Cardenio, and lastly, begged, advised, and urged them to come with him to his village, where they might furnish themselves with what they needed, and take measures to discover Don Fernando, or restore Dorothea to her parents, or do what seemed to them most advisable. Cardenio and Dorothea thanked him, and accepted the kind offer he made them, and the barber, who had been listening to all attentively and in silence, on his part some kindly words also, and with no less good will than the curate, offered his services in any way that might be of use to them. He also explained to them in a few words the object that had brought them there, and the strange nature of Don Quixote's madness, and how they were waiting for his squire, who had gone in search of him. Like the recollection of a dream, the quarrel he had had with Don Quixote came back to Cardenio's memory, and he described it to the others, but he was unable to say what the dispute was about. At this moment they heard a shout, and recognized it as coming from Sancho Panza, who, not finding them where he had left them, was calling aloud to them. They went to meet him, and in answer to their inquiries about Don Quixote, he told them how he had found him stripped to his shirt, lank, yellow, half dead with hunger, and sighing for his lady Dulcinea. And although he had told him that she commanded him to quit that place and come to El Toboso, where she was expecting him, he had answered that he was determined not to appear in the presence of her beauty until he had done deeds to make him worthy of her favor. And if this went on, Sancho said, he ran the risk of not becoming an emperor as in duty bound, or even an archbishop, which was the least he could be, for which reason they ought to consider what was to be done to get away from there. The licentiate in reply told him not to be uneasy, for they would fetch him away in spite of himself. He then told Cardenio and Dorothea what they had proposed to do to cure Don Quixote, or at any rate to take him home. Upon which Dorothea said she could play the distressed damsel better than the barber, especially as she had there the dress in which to do it to the life, and that they might trust her to acting the part in every particular requisite for carrying out their scheme, for she had read a great many books of chivalry, and knew exactly the style in which afflicted damsels begged boons of knights errant. In that case, said the curate, there is nothing more required than to set about it at once, for beyond a doubt, fortune is declaring itself in our favor, since it has so unexpectedly begun to open a door for your relief and smooth the way for us to our object. Dorothea then took out of her pillow-case a complete petticoat of some rich stuff, and a green mantle of some other fine material, and a necklace and other ornaments out of a little box. And with these in an instant she so arrayed herself that she looked like a great and rich lady. All this and more, she said, she had taken from home in case of need, but until then she had had no occasion to make use of it. They were all highly delighted with her grace, air, and beauty, and declared Don Fernando to be a man of very little taste when he rejected such charms. But the one who admired her most was Sancho Panza, for it seemed to him, what indeed was true, that in all the days of his life he had never seen such a lovely creature, and he asked the curate with great eagerness who this beautiful lady was, and what she wanted in these out-of-the-way quarters. This fair lady, brother Sancho, replied the curate, is no less a personage than the heiress in the direct male line of the great kingdom of Micomicon, who has come in search of your master to beg a boon of him, which is that he redress a wrong or injury that a wicked giant has done her. And from the fame as a good knight which your master has acquired far and wide, this princess has come from Guinea to seek him. A lucky seeking and a lucky finding, said Sancho Panza at this, especially if my master has the good fortune to redress that injury and right that wrong, and kill that son of a bitch of a giant your worship speaks of, as kill him he will if he meets him, unless indeed he happens to be a phantom, for my master has no power at all against phantoms. But one thing among others I would beg of you, Signor Licentiate, which is, that to prevent my master from taking a fancy to be an archbishop, for that is what I am afraid of, your worship would recommend him to marry this princess at once. For in this way he will be disabled from taking archbishop's orders, and will easily come into his empire, and I to the end of my desires. I have been thinking the matter over carefully, and by what I can make out, I find it will not do for me that my master should become an archbishop, because I am no good for the church, as I am married. And for me now, having as I have a wife and children, to set about obtaining dispensations to enable me to hold a place of profit under the church, would be endless work. So that, Signor, it all turns on my master marrying this lady at once, for as yet I do not know her grace, and I cannot call her by her name. She is called the Princess Micomicona, said the curate, for as her kingdom is Micomicon, it is clear that must be her name. There's no doubt of that, replied Sancho, for I have known many to take their name and title from the place where they were born, and call themselves Pedro of Alcala, Juan of Ubeda, and Diego of Valladolid, and it may be that over there in Guinea, queens have the same way of taking the names of their kingdoms. So it may, said the curate, and as for your master's marrying, I will do all in my power towards it. With which Sancho was much pleased, as the curate was amazed at his simplicity, and at seeing what a hold the absurdities of his master had taken of his fancy, for he had evidently persuaded himself that he was going to be an emperor. By this time, Dorothea had seated herself upon the curate's mule, and the barber had fitted the ox-tail beard to his face, and they now told Sancho to conduct them to where Don Quixote was, warning him not to say that he knew either the licentiate or the barber, as his master's becoming an emperor entirely depended on his not recognizing them. Neither the curate nor Cardenio, however, thought fit to go with them. Cardenio, lest he should remind Don Quixote of the quarrel he had had with him, and the curate, as there was no necessity for his presence just yet. So they allowed the others to go on before them, while they themselves followed slowly on foot. The curate did not forget to instruct Dorothea how to act, but she said they might make their minds easy, as everything would be done exactly as the books of chivalry required and described.
Okay, so that was a raw steno demo from Don Quixote. And you guys can go and see where the story is, what excerpt I found in the file, and see for yourself and practice to it. Okay, next time we will go back to our Day in the Life of series, Day in the Life of a Stenographer series. Okay, that's all. Bye-bye.